Feed yourself.
Doing the things we do, spreading the news we spread.
So hi SAMER, how are
Hello,
you?
how are you?
Yes,
It's
I'm
my
fine.
pleasure to be here. Thank
Yes,
you so much.
yes, I share the pleasure.
Feed yourself.
Doing the things we do, spreading the news we spread.
So hi SAMER, how are
Hello, how
you?
are you?
Yes,
It's
I'm
my
fine.
pleasure to be here. Thank
Yes,
you so much.
yes, I share the pleasure with you. It's a privilege for me to have you today. Thanks for coming and for showing up. It was not easy, but at least we managed to find a time lapse in which we can discuss.
Yes,
So
sure, of course.
yes, very nice viewers for all around the world, Africa, Asia, Europe, South America. It's great to have everybody together today to listen to this contemporary thinker, somebody I appreciate the work really. And I like to think that he's setting the basis for the future now. So he's an award-winning architect. If I try to present him by the list of his award, I'll spend 36 years maybe counting all of them. His journey started in 1998, yes, I think, with the Farsi Award of Architecture, Medina
Yes.
Magazine Furniture Design Competition in 2000, first prize, and then Village Competition, next Smart Village Competition the next year in 2001. American University of Sharjah Architecture and Sustainability 2001. So go on and on up till 2020, 2021 with La Fondation Jacques Rougerie with 6 years of great achievement and Mars Award, including NASA Johnson Space Center, where his work was exhibited. Today, he's featuring Discovery Channel, UK, Dutch TV, California Dreamers, Warren Magazine 2017. We can go on and forth, but what I have to say is that each year there's an award. And what appeals to me the most and make me appreciate the time I've passed here and the humility of his trajectory and his career is that his fathers in Egypt, those who knows Egypt, the great history of architecture, has selected him or classified him as being one of the 100 best architects for the last 100 years. So that was the one that amazed me, that pleases me the most because I know a little bit of contemporary history of architecture in Egypt, having read maybe all the books of Hassan Fati, Mustafa Pasha Fahmy, and I think Karim Said, and seeing that Sameh is one of them, it's with great humility that I'm taking this interview. So I hope you too will enjoy like me and be ready to learn what
Of
is
course.
what is motivating him, what is his drive and everything. So it make me wonder what motivates you. For a man, is not what people say about him, but what you say about yourself. So my first question will be, what is your drive?
So let me first thank you for this lovely evening that I'm enjoying very so much.
Thank
So
you.
approaching me or talking about me, I do believe that I see myself belonging to the first generation of space architects who will write the future, turning science fiction into design reality to pave the road for humanity to survive and thrive outside Earth in the near future. and on Earth as well by using existing technologies or near future technologies. I started the career early a little bit. In 1998, I was a first year student in the School of Architecture. So before graduating, I have earned 3 awards before being an architect or a licensed architect. But for the time being, I can define myself as a science tech. It's a new term that I have invented. It's a scientist and architect at the same time.
Yes.
I'm an experimental architect. I'm using science in making architecture and then experimenting this architecture and finally produces original science and producing it in scientific papers. It's as a byproduct of the awarded project, of course. I'm also a futurist, a visionary and technology driven entrepreneur, which I'm calling also as an architect entrepreneur. So,
Yes, that's great. What I retain that is when you say that you are a science tech and you created that word, that means there's creativity everywhere, starting from catch. So I know as we discussed that you graduated from Alexandria University, and actually you are 42 years old. I'm a little bit younger. I would say even much more younger. But in architecture world, 42 years is still young. But uh, how have you managed, if I may ask, to benefit from that environment and talk to us a little bit about your journey, your school, your diplomas, and everything.
well, first of all, my early beginnings was reading in science fiction. I started reading about science fiction since I was 8 years old. I have merely read everything that I can find. I wouldn't go out with my parents without buying 2 or 3 books of science fiction. So that was exactly the first inspiration you can. Even
Yeah.
my first award, it was an award in drawing. I was like 7 years old, having a 7 years old competition, and I was awarded as well the first prize. So that also inspired me, and it was the idea of my father actually to start or entering a competition at this early age. So having two main lines, the science fiction and the competitive environment. Well, in the time being and after the 2000, the year 2000, I think that everything is working for our favor. I mean, 30 or 40 years ago, the pioneers of architecture or the star architects like Sir Norman Foster or Lady Zaha Hadid, may her soul rest in peace, they used to
Yes.
exert a lot of effort and walking distances and reaching people wasn't really easy at that time. But now with the grace of the internet and the fourth G and the fifth G and the accelerative pace of advancements, we do have
Yes.
every kind of opportunity to reach people. And from Egypt, I have really participated in competitions and won competitions in 4 different continents. So if I didn't have this kind of technology, that wouldn't be possible. I have a platforms. We have social media where you can connect it to people. You can connect it to other colleagues and peers. I'm today talking to you via the Zoom,
Yes.
which is a recent technology, and we will be posting it on a YouTube, which
Mm-hmm.
I might say that the YouTube is a gold mine. You can learn everything that you can imagine out of it. You
Yes.
can find a lot of opportunities.
It's a great
So
tool
I'm
for
having
continuous education.
yeah, exactly. So that's
Design. Thanks for coming and for showing up. It was not easy, but at least we managed to find a time lapse in which we can discuss.
yes,
So,
sure, of course.
yes, very nice viewers for all around the world, Africa, Asia, Europe, South America. It's great to have everybody together today to listen to this contemporary thinker, somebody I appreciate the work really, and I like to think that he's setting the basis for the future now. So he's an award-winning architect. If I try to present him by the list of his award, I'll spend 36 years maybe counting all of them. His journey started in 1998, yes, I think, with the Farsi Award of Architecture, Medina
Yes.
Magazine Furniture Design Competition in 2000, first prize, and then Village Competition, next Smart Village Competition the next year in 2001. American University of Sharjah Architecture and Sustainability 2001. So go on up till 2020, 2021 with La Fondation Jacques Rougerie with 6 years of great achievement and mass award, including NASA Johnson Space Center, where his work was exhibited. Today, he's featuring Discovery Channel, UK, Dutch TV, California Dreamers, Warren Magazine 2017. We can go on and forth, but one I have to say is that each year there's an award. And what appeals to me the most and make me appreciate the time I've passed here and the humility of his trajectory and his career is that his fathers in Egypt, those who knows Egypt, the great history of architecture, has selected him or classified him as being one of the 100 best architects for the last 100 years. So that was the one that amazed me, that pleases me the most because I know a little bit of contemporary history of architecture in Egypt, having read maybe all the books of Hassan Fati, Mustafa Pasha Fahmy, and I think Karim Said, and seeing that SAMER is one of them, it's with great humility that I'm taking this interview. So I hope you too will enjoy like me and be ready to learn what
Of
is
course.
what is motivating him, what is his drive and everything. So it make me wonder what motivates you. For a man, is not what people say about him, but what you say about yourself. So my first question will be, what is your drive?
So let me first thank you for this lovely evening that I'm enjoying very so much.
Thank
So
you.
approaching me or talking about me, I do believe that I see myself belonging to the first generation of space architects who will write the future, turning science fiction into design reality to pave the road for humanity to survive and thrive outside Earth in the near future, and on Earth as well, by using existing technologies or near future technologies. I started the career early a little bit in 1998. I was a first year student in the School of Architecture. So before graduating, I have earned 3 awards before being an architect or a licensed architect. But for the time being, I can define myself as a science tech. It's a new term that I have invented. It's a scientist and architect at the same time.
Yes.
I'm an experimental architect. I'm using science in making architecture and then experimenting this architecture and finally produces original science and producing it in scientific papers. It's as a byproduct of the awarded project, of course. I'm also a futurist, a visionary and technology driven entrepreneur, which I'm putting also as an architect entrepreneur. So,
Yes, that's great. What I retain that is when you say that you are a science tech and you created that word, that means there's creativity everywhere, starting from catch. So I know as we discussed that you graduated from Alexandria University, and actually you are 42 years old. I'm a little bit younger. I would say even much more younger. But in architecture world, 42 years is still young. But uh, how have you managed, if I may ask, to benefit from that environment and talk to us a little bit about your journey, your school, your diplomas, and everything.
well, first of all, my early beginnings was reading in science fiction. I started reading about science fiction since I was 8 years old. I have merely read everything that I can find. I wouldn't go out with my parents without buying 2 or 3 books of science fiction. So that was exactly the first inspiration you can. Even
Yeah.
my first award, it was an award in drawing. I was like 7 years old, having a 7 years old competition, and I was awarded as well the first prize. So that also inspired me, and it was the idea of my father actually to start or entering a competition at this early age. So having two main lines, the science fiction and the competitive environment. Well, in the time being and after the year 2000, I think that everything is working for our favor. I mean, 30 or 40 years ago, the pioneers of architecture or the star architects like Sir Norman Foster or Lady Zaha Hadid, may her soul rest in peace, they used to
Yes.
exert a lot of effort and walking distances, and reaching people wasn't really easy at that time. But now, with the grace of the internet and the fourth G and the fifth G and the accelerative pace of advancements, we do have
Yes.
every kind of opportunity to reach people. And from Egypt, I have really participated in competitions and won competitions in 4 different continents. So if I didn't have this kind of technology, that wouldn't be possible. I have a platforms. We have social media where you can connect it to people. You can connect it to other colleagues and peers. I'm today talking to you via the Zoom,
Yes.
which is a recent technology, and we will be posting it on a YouTube, which
Mm-hmm.
I might say that the YouTube is a gold mine. You can learn everything that you can imagine out of it. You
Yes.
can find a lot of opportunities.
It's a great
So
tool
I'm
for
having
continuous education.
yeah, exactly. So that's this is the opportunity of our age. Maybe in another couple of years, there will emerge a new technology. During the pandemic year, it was a very nice privilege for all of us that people were sitting at home and start making all kind of seminars and all kind of interviews. So by talking and connecting to each other, that was also a privilege. You have just to keep an eyes wide open and to hunt every kind of opportunity. You can't really miss an opportunity to connect to people, to start learning, and to start contributing and offering original contributions to your field, which of course is architecture.
Yes. That's very good and insightful. Yeah, we should really benefit from our time, and that's exactly as you said. What we are doing here with this interview, we are sharing knowledge, spreading awareness, and getting to be known and to know more about others. And I think cannot say that we must go back. It's true, I'm a low tech guy, but I can't do without internet. I can't do without information. I can't have enough knowledge without being able to share it. So we talked a little bit about your background and how's the environment competition thing in your country? Is it popular? Because you have a big drive, but is it the same all around, or it was just something you grew up with or developing?
Well, the culture, it is something changeable by the place and the time.
Of
So in
course.
every place and in every context, it changes. If you'd like to coin it as the competitions culture, yeah, I can say that there is a new culture of entering competitions all around the world, not only in Middle East or in Egypt. It is getting popular day after day. My
Mhm.
professor used to say, if you want to learn architecture, enter a lot of competitions and participate in a lot of competitions. So in Egypt, yes, I can find new talents. Hidden talents are being revealed every day by these kind of competitions. So it is the opportunity to get known, to even to express yourself, to be to show the world how do you think, what can you do. So yes, it's getting popular day by day, and 20 years ago it wasn't just as today, and I believe in the future it will be growing much more. Yes.
Yes, one of my aims is that in the future, wherever the country, whatever the project, it's true, they must protect local developers, local architects, and whatsoever, but every and all project must go through a competition, it's my belief, to have the best of the best whenever, wherever, because in a sense, we can benefit on globalization in that regard. So it will help the architects develop much more and project become more and more full of knowledge. So yes, as you say, competition gives us a little bit of freedom. And like Gary used to say, I don't know why people hire architects and then tell them what to do. So you better enter in a competition and then be able to work out of the constraints. So uh, being involved each year in various competition, tell me why is it important apart from what your teacher told you?
Well, Let me say this, architectural competitions are important actually to learn and accumulate experiences. You always compete against your past version before competing against others, you know. So by the time you find your skills had grown enormously. Also, architectural competitions give you a world recognition. Anyone can Google your name now and see your accomplishments, your contribution,
Yes.
your added value. You can always try to push yourself hard to the limits and explore new skills that you didn't explore before. Also, in competitions, you have the freedom to design without any constraints from a client. You know, they can't tell you
Yes.
anything. You just it's your personality that is reflected in your entry, and here your personal choices in design occur actually.
Yes. So, since competition are, according to what you say, opportunities to cross barrier, what are then your criteria to participate in competitions? Is it
Well,
the prize
there is
or whatever the number of deliverables?
well, after 20 years of experiencing competition since I was a student in the School of Architecture, I will share with you some of my secrets. I start the competition by reading the competition brief from below to upward, not the vice versa, to decide
Okay.
either to compete the competition brief and to complete it or to stop wasting time on it. I can summarize the criteria in the following points. First of all, it should be something prestigious and from a reputable foundation. I don't waste my time actually on scams. And this time we have a lot of scams, which are foundation that only seek the registration money. I didn't really make a good benefit or a good added value. So
Sadly.
the real prize is yes, the real prize is not the money actually. If you need money, do not enter architecture competitions. They are too risky. They are a waste of time. But if you seek your future and your career and developing in your career, which eventually later on it will bring you money, you have to learn and keep learning and develop. So that is the key point of entering a competition. Second thing, it should be a free competition. I have a moral problem of competitions that do not only asks you for free work, but also ask you to pay for it. So I'm against having a paid registration, unless, of course, it is a very prestigious, like the Architectural Festival, International Architectural Festival in Kuala Lumpur in 2019. I was interested to pay, and gladly I paid. And while I was paying the entry fee, I told the organizers, in a couple of months, I will be here collecting my award, and that was done.
Yes, confidence is a
So
base.
yes, the third thing is the number of deliverables determine the effort and the time needed. So working on a 5A3 is not will not work. It's not like working on a 12A1 panels, for example. You have to
Hmm.
define the amount of work to decide either you will be entering it alone or you need a team. And if you need a team, then you have another extra problem, which is managing this team. And how can you define the role of each member and how can you decide the flow of the work between the team? And that, of course, takes a lot of effort for me, but it helps you to accomplish a big scale competition. The last thing, it should be serving my purpose, my personal purpose, and helping me learn and grow. Each competition for me, it adds a new experience which I need. So I take the opportunity to enter a competition to conduct a research and learn about something new. For example, I entered competitions about rammed earth, and before it, I didn't know anything about rammed earth. I
Hmm.
entered competition about the zero energy houses. And once I have learned about the zero energy houses, I decided to make a scientific paper about zero energy houses, and so and so.
Okay, great. So, like Bernard Chumi always says, architecture is not much a knowledge of form, but a form of knowledge. So, competition is all about getting more knowledge and sharing more knowledge. So, so in that regard, do you have any specific methodology to elaborate proposals?
Yes, of course, any one of us, even if you are a student, you will be defining your own path, your own way.
Yes.
And it develops by years until it reaches what we can call it a methodology. But actually, a methodology, it is something that will be evolving and growing by years. But I can summarize my competition phases in three main phases. The first one is the research phase, and I consider it's a very important phase. The work in this phase ensures the strong scientific hypothesis. Then comes the design phase, which is the most interesting, of course, one the most interesting phase, I apply many thinking methods like the lateral thinking, the vertical thinking. I generated the ideas in a 3D software. For me, it's an open dimensional media. Media is defined as the degree of freedom. So working on a 2D paper and pencil, you are working in a two-dimensional media, or
Yeah.
just two dimension means two freedom dimensions. So working on a 3D platform, it gives you additional freedom, which of course reflects as an additional creativity.
Mhm.
So it can really help you with a high degree of innovation to solve the design problem. The third phase, which is the final phase of the competition.
Without stopping you, I'd like to ask a question before you continue. Talking of 2D and 3D, it's true the digitalization is taking over due to access, due to more knowledge of how it works. But there are still schools in which student, everybody is encouraged to be diving into 2Ds, diving maybe into 3Ds, but with handwork, pencil, charcoal, painting, and not much about this digitalization because they believe that working with a computer, their belief is that working with computers is not helping to develop inner creativity. What is your take about that?
Well, I'll just have a very short reply about this inquiry by giving you a very nice example. By coincidence, I teach history. So during teaching history, I was amazed, about the Paleolithic age and the petroglyphs, these kind of drawings that you can find on caves. At
Yeah.
that time, people didn't have brushes or didn't have pencils, but they
Mm-hmm.
produced art. They produced creativity using some colors and stones and start carving on the walls. Today, and by the years have gone, we invented the ink and we invented the pens and the brushes, and they started using fine tools for producing art. I do think that each era has its own tools, but what is staying actually is the creativity. So the human creativity is not limited only to a 2D uh, pencil and paper. You are creative mind, you will continue to produce creativity and innovation. And
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, you can really the contribution of the architect is growing by four phases, starting by a routine design, and routine design is a design that have no creativity at all, and then you start innovating or making some additions which make it an innovative design. And then by the continuity of the innovations, he reaches the creative design, which is a much more higher level. And lastly, the really original thing is the original design. And these are limited to the only people who can change the course of mankind into a better strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So I work 2D. I'm a sketcher, by the way, an urban sketcher. I do produce a lot of sketches, and sketching in a two-dimensional media comes in a particular phase during my design. I practice it using something called the visual note taking and the visual thinking, and it is the phase
Mm-hmm.
between the research phase and the design phase. When I
Yes.
download or I put all of my ideas into my sketchbook, I have all kind and sizes of sketchbook that you can imagine. I
Yeah.
have more than 450 marker and pencil that I use, but they come in a particular phase that I have defined it as just mapping what I'm thinking in. But
Here's my
later
new
on, I have to.
one. It's still empty.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, that's lovely.
any project is a new book like this.
Yes, yes.
It's right.
I have also the pocket sketchbooks. Even going to a mall or having a dinner outside, you have to carry your own sketchbook. But you cannot limit your work only on a 2D phase. You have to use all what is available today.
Mhm.
So shall I continue the phases of the
Yes,
present?
you can
Yeah.
go on. It's
Okay.
true that I
So
cannot go out in Zina with my sketchbook. All my friends have already said that they don't want to see me sketching when they are there again.
yeah, that's nice. So the three phases, as I summarized before, the research phase and then the design phase, and
Mhm.
last one is the presentation phase.
Yeah.
Actually, the presentation phase is as important as the research phase and the design phase in a competition. It needs to know who are the jurors to design the best strategy to deliver them the work of design in a way that they would be understanding and appreciated. And really, you can see that there are 5 phases of a presentation strategy. I call it the presentation strategy because it is a strategy. You have to think and endure the effort and time to create something. So I first begin with the conception phase, which is a total idea, making a big image, just to an eye-catchy image, to make the jury just take care of your design. And then the perception, which is intriguing the details of the design, maybe in the plans and the sections, and start in the diagrams and start really capturing their emotions. And then the inception. Inception is delivering a narrative through the design. And this
Mm-hmm.
communication comes with the progressive diagramming, the exploded isometrics, all kind of communication that you are delivering what is beyond the lines, the
Yeah.
silent message, the cultural message of the architect that you would like to tell people. And sometimes you use the deception. Deception is the art of bringing what is good in your design and hiding what is bad and what your fears in the design. And of
Yes.
course,
It's
the last phase is the physical mission using physical models. But of course, not each competition needs a physical model, but they
yeah.
are, the 5 phases. So these 3 phases: the research phase, design phase, presentation phase. And after these phases, I continuously explore the relationship between the qualities of the past, the endeavors of the future, trying to find a meeting ground between the two realms, using the cutting edge technology, which you called it the digital world or the digital technology.
Yeah.
These main outlines of my architectural school of thought could be summarized in 3 main points regarding my methodology, because my origins are from Middle East. I walk on the
Yeah.
same street that people used to walk 7,000 years ago, and I'm
Great.
proud of it. Yeah. So digging deep in this knowledge and science accumulated through thousands of years to capture the hidden values and intangible strengths of this legacy. This is the first part. Second part is rethinking those values using the cutting edge technology, name it, simulation, parametric design, generative design, digital fabrication, 3D printing, 3D scanning, even to create a state of art architecture
Mm-hmm.
that carried the spirit of the past, but at the same time, not in the shape of the form of the past, not in the morphological state, but in the
Mm-hmm.
core experience of the users. That is the most important. And the
Yes.
last
Talking.
thing, to cut a long story,
Yes.
is
Yes.
documenting. Yeah,
No. Go
is
ahead.
documenting those experiments through publishing them in architecture competitions, scientific papers, to deliver it to the future generations. I believe that it's our responsibility in this age. We are in the mid age. You have to take from the past and to deliver it to the future, having your own print on it. You can just ignore your past, and you cannot start by inventing something new without connecting to their roots. And then it is important that these roots someday will have the fruits that you can give it to the future generation. And when I call future generations, it's the generation that will occur after 500 years from now, not just your sons or grandsons,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
just to help them
So
continue their legacy.
yes, you must design the present with awareness of the past. That's
True.
one quote of Norman Foster that inspired my thesis work. Actually, my topic, my subject is the encounter between local traditional architecture in Central Africa with artificial intelligence. So that's what I'm working on. So I really understand where you are coming from and where you are going to, and how much in front you are in that regard, considering that you cannot just come and say that you want to invent from scratch. Meanwhile, people were there for 2,000 years, 3,000 years. We go back to Egypt, we go back to the pharaohs, we go back to all those design traditions, all the acquire the knowledge, even back to nature, and you understand that you have to learn from it. It is a concept I've called citizenship expertise, where I go in the villages or in the cities. I'm no more the architect, I'm no more the expert, I'm no more the PhD fellow or whatever. I'm learning from them, building with them without giving any instruction, just obeying to their laws to understand how it works. But yes, there's difference between knowledge and interpretation, and what you are great at is interpretation, where you are the best at. So we are still on our way to be able to move from knowledge to producing architecture for future generation. And that part is the part that acts like one of my teacher always told us at school, learn how to sit down. Because when you are young, you want to go up and down, but learn how to sit down. And we had those
And
big
focus.
table, yes, big board of drawing where you have to draw the cities and everything. It was not easy. So, yeah, I think students who are listening, even young professional, even senior professional, would have learned much, especially for me, about conceiving the presentation as if it was a new project. Because I recall doing a competition last year. It was about COVID, how new hospital must behave in time of pandemics. They told me that they called me later. I did not won the competition. I was even not even about the special mention or whatever. But one of the founders called me later and say he finally diving into my project and believe that they'll choose my project for construction and they will just give the fees to the one who won the competition and was asking me if I can uh, call him in the team to work with him because at the end of the day, he's the one who won the competition. I said, but why did I lose at first time? They said, we did not even see your presentation. So when you take your board, you look at it, when if the places in the wall with thousands of others will not even notice that there's something there. So that's for students, it's a great insight. Learn how to present, learn how to market your project. So so from all those competition you design, which one you like the most and why? It's not easy to choose among your babies, but who knows?
Yeah, you are true. This is like the most hard, really question that could be answered. But let me stop here and tell you about the milestones or the competition that really had left a good impression on me. I can remember the first competition that I entered. It was like when I was 7 years old. It was a drawing competition that my father told me about. Since that day, I decided to compete and to show the world my designs. Then comes the national competition that I won back when I was in architecture school, and that helped me a lot in completing the expenses of my education.
Great.
But really, for me, the most important competition is the one that I didn't create yet, the one in the future that I will be making this significant contribution, and that what motivates me and energizes me really to innovate.
Yes, I think the first question I asked was your drive. I think I can start to see that your drive is beating your past version each time. That's really your main drive. And having such a drive means that it might be difficult for you to have reference, but if you can tell me of any reference in architecture, that would be great.
Yes, of course. Of course, I have undergone the academic learning and education of architecture and learned about all pioneers of architecture and so. But really, the main reference, in my opinion, is nature. We have been created on this earth. I have a statement that I keep telling my students: divine rules are design rules. Divine rules are the code of design that you have to stick to. When we teach them the basics in the first year, which is the balance, the rhythm, the symmetry, whatever. We learned all of this is from nature, the
Yeah.
architecture of the cell, the human cell, the architecture of the human body. We have a structure system.
Hmm.
We have a skin, the same abbreviations that we use in architecture. It's much more advanced. And using these codes, some people, call it biomimicry, but I think it is much, much wider than just a biomimicry. Don't limit it to biomimicry. Biomimicry is using the experience of the creatures in problem solving. No, it's much much bigger. You have to study and keep studying, and you will be amazed how you change and in a way of thinking you will reach the architecture of the universe, the sacred geometry. I do mean, just to summarize it, you will find all answers in this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So please, guys, read this. Divine rules are design rules. I wrote it in my book, so this project is going to focus on that. So, good architecture lets nature in, and it's not only about biomimicking, but also much more about understanding the ecosystem, the relationships, the scales, the sheets, diving deep, really diving deep. It's as if I'm going to change all my two first chapters of my thesis now. Do you have any architects as an inspiration? Maybe architect that follow that the same rules, or who knows?
Well, yes, of course. Each young architect at the beginning, they had another architects to be inspired with. But in my age, things are a little bit different. I am inspired. I'm inspired by who? By my future version. I always imagine myself after 500 years. How can people will be reading about my work in history books, how they will be conceiving what I have contributed to this world. So my future version that I'm also thrilled to continue to develop and to enhance. I continuously push myself to the limits to meet this guy, my future version. I was inspired by persistence hunting. The persistence hunting, it is a concept that is very well known, which is also called the endurance hunting. You can find it on Wikipedia, by the way, and read much more about it. It is
Yes.
used by, for example, the traditional African hunters. It is a hunting technique in which hunters may be slower than they prey over short distances, but they use a combination of running, walking, and trekking to pursue their prey. A persistent hunter must be able to run along a distance over an extended period of time. That was my strategy, to have a slow steps but steady and sure in winning. Have patience. Patience is a key important element in success. You know, I always also believe in something. Architecture, in my opinion, it is the interface between a well-crafted mess and a well-carved space. So you have this paradox between the crafted mess from the outside and a carved space from the inside. If you can master the design of this interface between a well-crafted mess that is serving your purpose and the purpose of your society, and a well-carved space that also creates a good architecture, that is the real success. For me, Jacques Rougerie Foundation was the motive to study and research in space architecture. I was always fascinated by the concept of being a space engineer since I was 16, a teenager, but I didn't have that major in my city at that time. So I entered the architecture with that dreams. I left it in my back mind, and once I found the competitions posted on the internet, I just have recalled this old dream.
Mhm.
I decided to start from 2009, but regarding Jacques Rougerie Foundation, I started with them from 2015 to have a long-term relationship with this foundation. It's not just entering a competition. I started to build a career with these
Mhm.
people. Each year, I enter the competition trying to win. As
Of
the
course.
years pass, I learn and gain more experience in addition to sharpening my skills. So the real reward here was the process, not the reward. The
Mhm.
process of learning, the process of accumulating the experience during years. After 6 years, I have read a lot of books that I now am teaching the space architecture even in my university here.
Uh, I think I can recall of the Maasai tribe in Kenya or Tanzania. There, those guys are endurance hunters. I think I'll go and dive in a little bit to have much more insight, because sometimes when you have a belief like yours, where I don't have any reference, or I do no more have any reference, because you're no more a student, you already have your path, people will take it, they may say you are egomaniac, or you want to change your world by yourself or whatever, but it's something philosophical that you have recorded in your design DNA or RNA, so that any distraction cannot stop you from focusing in going forward. And that is something that is helpful for future generation, because the legacy will be able to be readable progressively. And everybody, each designer must be able, in a sense, in a certain regard, if his real passion is diving into art, to have that same mindset. So Now we are going to phases that interest me the most, and I'm sure the public will understand. We went through presentation talking of who you are. Now let's talk of what you do. So, if you can present to us some projects, any project, and then we try to dive in and understand with maybe sketches of images, what we've been talking about since with words and philosophical theories.
Yeah, sure. Just enable me to share my screen. It tell me host disabled participants screen sharing. So I'll be needing your consent.
Okay. I think we'll stop here. I will send you another
Yeah,
link for that second part. It
yeah.
will
For
be
that time,
better.
yeah. This is very smart idea.
Yes.
You already let me know just to start.
Yes, you can start. I've already
Oh,
introduced it, so.
okay. So my presentation now will be talking about two, contradicting concepts. Should we design or think, sorry, out of the box or inside the box? That
I'll
is
say
the most important
outside.
question. Yes, of course, I know. And most of the people really, and most of the books and the thoughts that are currently working now, they tend really to choose that choice to think outside the box, to break all of the norms. And at some extent, this is true actually. But also thinking inside the box is much more harder. In both cases, either you will be thinking outside the box or inside the box you have to innovate, but not in each time you can just break the rules or the design codes or the requirements of the client or the constraints of the site. So sometimes, yes, we need also to innovate and produce creative architecture, but inside the box, and that is the most important part. As you have mentioned earlier, these are some of the competitions that I do remember. I gathered them, and most of them, some of them, not most of them, some of them is was thinking about a methodology, how to think out of the box, but also many of them how to think inside the box, especially when you have a very fat brief, of 60 page that asks you for all of the design requirements. So I also, wandered all of the world and met a lot of culture and been exposed to a lot of cultures. So after this, I can summarize. I will be showing you now two projects. One of these projects will be that's also the NASA Exhibition Center. I have yeah, and in Wired magazine, I think I have made this introduction. So this is a that you use to have a general complete fitness. Each exercise is working on a single muscle or a specific muscle in your body. But
Yeah.
after practicing all of these exercises, after 1 year, for example, or a couple of years, you will be having a general high fitness level. This is true. So this is about the physical exercise of your body. For us as architects, we have something similar. I have gathered them in this 22 way of thinking. You can read about them and you can get it familiar with them from Wikipedia, from many resources. You can find them in many books.
Yeah.
These are the kind of exercises that I do believe anyone who is working in a creative domain should be practicing just to have a mind fitness and a general mind fitness. So for now, I'll be talking or exposing the first only two, the lateral thinking and the vertical thinking, and how I have applied those methods and some of the competitions that I have chosen to work on a lateral thinking and I have lost. I didn't win because it was important for me to think in a vertical thinking way, not in a lateral thinking, and that decision cost me a competition. But
Yeah.
many of the competitions also had won using one or two. You have just to determine what is the right way and the right approach that you have to start. So as I mentioned earlier, it was a research, then a design synthesis, and then a presentation strategy that was mentioned earlier. So first one will be the space settlements. And just to bear in mind, I will not be presenting a project or an awarded competition. For
Yeah.
me, it is a line of production. It is a line of innovation. This
Yeah.
project for me stayed like 4 years, I guess 4 years, and I keep developing it and creating new versions out of it. And each opportunity or each a new competition, I enter with the produced with the developed version out of it.
Great.
Let's start by Le Corbusier. You know,
Mhm.
it is always life that is right and the architect who is wrong, unless you have learned the lesson, which is the design rules are the divine rules. Yes. So, first of all, it is about emulation of models, systems, and elements that will be derived from nature for the purpose of solving complex space architecture challenges. I do believe that the beginnings are the same. Our beginning millions of years ago on Earth, we didn't have the technology, and the environment was so harsh, and we are experiencing the same conditions, but this time on space. So we have to learn the lessons.
Mhm.
Second thing, it's applying the horizontal thinking. It's the ability to use your imagination to look at a problem in a fresh way and come with new solutions by borrowing solutions from a domain to another different domain.
Yeah.
That was the core, by the way, of the biomimicry. If you also would have the privilege to talk about it, biomimicry is about the same method. You know, you learn from nature and start borrowing from nature solutions.
Yeah.
So
But I
that was
think you
the,
go far more in because you don't just borrow from nature, you
you
learn
have to
from
develop, you have,
nature
yeah,
and develop it progressively.
your added value should be present in your work.
Mhm.
So I was inspired at the beginning with a termites colony. This is a very sophisticated engineering work. You know, they store all kind of food all the year, and against all the floods and against all the disasters, it doesn't really get damaged, and they survive. And they
Yes.
can hatch and they can raise a complete generation inside this colony, which is an Earth architecture. It's considered to be Earth architecture using only passive solutions.
And if you
The
take it by
concept,
scale, they are far more better than us.
yes, this is totally true, and this is an amazing. You can find books about termites and how they survive.
Mhm.
Also, you have to learn from nature. You know, just one source of water can create all the life. So, by the source of water, the human settlements started. They can find the plants, and then you can raise your sheep and your animal, and make your synthetic flora and fauna, and make vegetations, and start a settlement, and then start building. So, one source of water, these the oasis, like the oasis in the desert culture,
Mhm.
started complete settlements, and that was the name of the project that I presented in the awarded space project. I called it Project Oasis,
Mhm.
inspired from this concept. The last one, you know, in Africa and in Tunisia, in Libya, in many of the African countries, and in the desert
Yes.
settlements, you can
Sahara
find
too.
earth architecture. People, yes, people tended to dig inside the earth and to seek shelter in earth, inside the earth,
Mhm.
as we do in the space architecture. We are seeking inside the caves of the moon to protect us from the radiation from the meteors. So it is the same analogy, in my opinion. So these three sources were the lateral thing. These were the sources of inspiration that drive me really to produce my work. Talking to the morphological aspect, the circle, you know, there is a silent language between the architect and their users. It's a
Mhm.
cultural message, you know. Geometry implies messages.
Yeah.
Geometries deliver you messages. The circle was the geometry of the infinite community, the collaboration. We tended to use the even the word we call the circle of trust, the circle of friends, the circle of family. So we use even the term. So using the circular geometry, and you can find the circular geometry in the three slides that I have presented earlier, the oasis, the colony.
Mhm.
You can find a common geometry between all of these images. It's the
Yes.
circle. So here was born Project Oasis. Project Oasis is just an interpretation of all these previous slides,
Yeah.
creating a clean zone. I know there won't be time today to elaborate and to tackle each single detail. Maybe in the future we can make something about it, but just to present it quickly and the story behind it. This is the
Yeah.
another version of the Project Oasis built here on Earth, and one of the Gulf countries have approached me and start negotiating about building a version of this Project Oasis, but on Earth for touristic purposes, which I also welcome. Starting the space tourism, I believe it will be on Earth before it will be on Moon. So having an
Yes.
Earth
So
analog is it's important and crucial,
it's a way of
and that's
experimenting, even.
yes, of course, experimenting and training the astronauts and find it's the first prototype that you have to evaluate and assess before building the other one.
Yeah.
Now you can find another versions. The one on the left is the moon version, which is the Project Oasis, but the new one is another one on the right. This one on the right is the Martian Oasis, and both of these projects had been awarded. The one on the left was awarded in 2018 by Jacques Rougerie Foundation. The
Mm-hmm.
other one on the right was awarded in Kuala Lumpur Architecture International Festival in 2019. Also, it was juried and judged by space experts and astronauts, both of them. So that was developed. Of course, there is a huge difference between the moon environment and the Martian environment. So
Yes.
that drive me to develop the design to be adaptable for each environment. That's the Martian Oasis.
Of course,
Just a quick slides.
in any context, you must apply a
Yeah, you
specific
have to apply
methodology
for
to
the new
adapt. Yeah.
variables.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And just one of these trees, this invention, which I'm seeking now to register as a patent, also has been awarded. I called it the Tree of Life. This is an independent entry in the Mars City Design competition in 2017, and it was awarded the first prize. It is a complete shelter, also inspired by nature. This movement inspired me to produce something using the piezoelectric technology and to start producing energy out of the wind movement. Of course, this is something that you can find on Mars only. It's
Mm-hmm.
not available on Moon. Moon, we don't have an atmosphere, but on
Yeah.
Mars, the atmosphere that could generate. And then dealing, you talked earlier about having sketches and 2D. This is
Yes.
the visual note taking that I was really working on, and downloading all of my ideas and thinking before testing that on a 3D platform. And then I started the first early prototypes and start designing. And these are the fins that will be generating the electricity using the wind.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an inflatable, lightweight structure that could be deployed on a rocket, and it will be growing trees. So planting the first tree on the Martian environment might look something. It might be something like that.
Yes. Bringing a tree will give life directly and a connection between humanity and his new environment. And in a sense, having playful renewable energy, I can just understand why all the prizes are being given.
Yeah, and maybe this is the reason that I called it tree of life. That the terminology or the word, the tree of life, you will find it merely in all earth cultures. All religions had talked about
Yes,
the tree of
religion
life. It
especially.
is, yeah, yeah. You can find it in nearly every culture. I have read through, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism. You can find the concept of the tree of life. No earth culture or ideology had denied the tree of life. So it is something that's common. It is, I believe that it is something that might unite us. The
Hmm.
diversity of the cultures would be melted into one fusion pot using a terminology or concept like that. This is
Hmm.
the 3D printed first prototypes
Version,
that I have
yes.
tested. Yes, and then I was awarded, and I had a nice workshop in Los Angeles in Mojave Desert, the site that they decided to build the first prototype,
Hmm.
and that was a project. But was a conceptual project. The other one that I'll be presenting today, or now, it is a realized project. It's a project that will be built in the Sahara Desert in western part of Egypt. And I use here
Hmm.
another different approach. It is the vertical thinking, which is a type of approach to the problem that usually involves one being selective, analytical, and sequential. So you dig deep inside the problem and tackle every single detail. You do not borrow solutions outside the problem, but you analyze the problem in details, and you keep
Hmm.
on persisting on the problems and trying to solve the challenges in this particular problem. It is called Beit al-Suhaimi. Beit al-Suhaimi, it is meaning in Arabic, the house of Suhaimi. And Suhaimi, this is a very well-known family that resided in Egypt in Middle Ages.
Mm-hmm.
So this house was designed in 2011 as a prototype of the Egyptian contemporary house. You know, we have a problem in Egypt. This problem that you have a very high diversity and kaleidoscope of past cultures. You have Islamic, Coptic, Roman, Greek-Roman, Byzantine, pharaohs. You can find many, many cultures. So
Mm-hmm.
what is the culture that will be expressing the Egyptian identity? In my opinion, it should be the modernism. It should be a new kind of culture that you manage to fuse and you melt all of these past experiences into one experience that can reflect an aspect of this culture. The contemporary Egyptian society. It is the product of
Mm-hmm.
7,000 years of all of these eras, the old Egyptian pharaohs, the Roman, the Coptic, the Islamic. So today you can find even in our language a word
Mm-hmm.
from the pharaohs, a word from the Romans, a word from even the French. You know, the French, Napoleon Bonaparte entered Egypt for 3 years in his campaign. You can find, so that reflected in our culture, in our language, and it should be also reflected in our architecture.
Of
So,
course.
what was the source of inspiration? The source of inspiration was this medieval ages house. This is an actual house that is made in Egypt, I think in the 15th century, as I remember, and it took 100 years to complete this house. Was many families residing this house, and just in order to understand this house and to understand the values of the Egyptian society, I had to visit their actual house and start building this house. And I built this house in 3D just to understand how it works,
Of
and
course.
not only from the outside, but even each and single space from the inside I had to build. And I have to walk daily inside it using the VR technology to experience the quality of life that these people lived 400 or 500 years ago. And
Yeah.
then I started making the new architecture. It has many values like visual reading of the architecture program, yet the privacy preserved. Because privacy is a very important issue in the Egyptian culture and the Middle Eastern culture in general. Creating social spaces for the intergenerational interaction, because you know the society here and our society, our local society values having the grandsons and the grandfathers in one house. They called it the family house, which carries
Mm-hmm.
3 generations. So you have to enhance the interaction between these different generations, not to create a points of conflict, but to make these generations come together in one place. Visual connectivity is established through open planes and terraces, and I do value the open spaces, and I call it the vertical courtyards. Having a
Yeah.
horizontal courtyard, it's something from the past, but the terrace, no, inserting a void inside the mess, I call it the vertical courtyard, and it's as important as the horizontal courtyard.
Mm-hmm.
Louvers, it is the technology using the aluminum louvers to reflect the sun, but it is inspired from the mashrabiyah, which is an old and ancient thing from the medieval ages in Egypt. Dispersed masses to allow air to pass through. So it's a breathable mass that allowing air to pass through to give you evaporative cooling without any consumption of electricity. Having an inner court with a water pool to enhance the evaporative cooling experience. The
Mm-hmm.
double skin, the walls and the roofs with a big cover to maximize shades. And you know, people design architecture, people design masses, people design spaces, but also you know something, you have to design the shades and shadows. The
Of
shades and
course.
shadows is an issue that should be designed, and you have to pay attention and effort as if you are designing the mass itself and the spaces. I made a quick calculation: 39 PV photovoltaic cells generating merely 10k watt daily for consumption of 5 family members. That could be increased, of course. By the years, it's getting advanced. This is polychronous, monochronous photovoltaic cells. It could be changed with a multi-junction, which have a higher performance PVs.
Yes.
So by advancing it, you can also generate more electricity, more energy. So the idea was to create a modern lifestyle carrying the values of our heritage, not to copy our heritage as it is. That was the compound. It was a 12 private home carrying the spirit of the traditional way of interaction. It's called the Hara or the Hara. It's a one
Mm-hmm.
big road, so people can have lunch together, can meet and celebrate and have festivals in this street, connecting all of the houses together. and that's the modern architecture. So that what I see, that is the Egyptian architecture. That what should be called Egyptian architecture. When you say no, even if you Google it, Egyptian architecture, you find the old pharaohs, the pyramids, and the temples of the pharaohs. But we have to make our own contribution in this age. After thousands of years, people should be, as they should be remembering the old Egyptian pharaohs, they also should be remembering us in 2020 and 2021, and they should value our contribution exactly like the pharaohs did thousands of years ago.
Yes.
So the special elements of this architecture program are hierarchical in privacy. Also, all spaces have views. Do not deny the right of people and the freedom to have a good view, but preserve their privacy. This is the most important, the most difficult issue to tackle. The intimacy of the social container, the street that should be acting as a social container of this society together. And you have to make something that is pleasant, that delightful, and giving them the wideness. The wideness was a very small trick. I just tackled all of the inner facades with a glass to give them the experience that it is a wide architecture. So from the outside, you cannot really find, you will find it a lot of solid masses, but from inside, the amount of glass will give you the openness.
Yes.
This is the other way.
Of course, the local climate is imposing even to learn from vernacular architect from traditional architecture. I don't like the word vernacular, from traditional architecture to for the shades and everything, but it always must have a sense of openness. In a kind, you are taking in what is theorized as how would I call it, biophilic design, where you have water, trees,
The elements of nature should be inserted,
yes,
yes.
element of nature, extended views, even in small or close space. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important. The environmental agenda was based upon standing on the latest technologies for self-sufficiency and renewable energy resources appropriate for our climate. You have tackled the same issue that I was just about to talk about.
Yeah.
And that drove me to another different kind of thinking, which was the scientific thinking, which is putting a hypothesis, prediction, controlled experiment observation, and then offering solutions. So here comes the science. Start using the simulation, the second principle in my methodology, which is using the cutting edge technology to develop our legacy, our heritage. So having the CFD and the computational fluid dynamics in testing the wind, how can the wind inside, you will find here that this mass it's an L-shaped mass, right? So it's totally closed for here. But you can find that the velocity of the wind here is very high. How could this velocity be high and this is a closed loop or a closed L? That was because the other floor, the second floor, we had an opening gap that will enable the wind to enter from the first floor and
And dive into.
getting out from the second floor. So that was the trick coming from the heart of the building, coming from the middle of the building. So this is the cooling method. This is the windows of Alexandria, the city, the nearest city of this or the location. And this is the mapping during a complete year. You can find the wind. That was important to enter all of these data inside the software to make sure that it will be working as you wish. And of course, using also the light simulation to understand across the hours of the days that you will be having a courtyard that will eliminate the need for any kind of artificial lighting. So daylight also will work in our favor. So it was awarded in 2011, Hassan Fathi Award.
Yes, I can understand.
Yeah, Hassan Fathi is the master of
Hassan.
sustainability. And then in Tunisia in 2011, the first prize in the Medibat Club for Scientific Innovation. So it was awarded twice. And then it was nominated for MedCop 21 in France, in Marseille, in 2015 to be, and it was exhibited at that time. And that was the most important milestone in this project, in the history of this project. And later on, it turned to a signature. So I start designing with the same methodology for a desert architecture, but that one was in Arizona, in the United States, but
Yes.
it carries the same values, and start presenting it. And also, it was also the same methodology and the same even tools. And then it was awarded again. And then I decided to turn all of these experiments into scientific paper. So that was the conference in 2017 in Hong Kong to present to the people the project, but as a science paper, not
Mm-hmm.
just a project. And
Yeah.
later on, also in Egypt, I turned it into another zero energy in Sinai. It's another different project, but using the same methodology and the same software simulation tools to create the same architecture, and it was awarded again. So I started the line, and then
Mm-hmm.
another project, but using the stones as a building material, but with the same values, and start testing also again using the computational fluid dynamics. So these are real life projects that will be really built in Egypt and in Middle East. And
Yeah.
it was also awarded the first prize, and I was honored by that prize. And also, I turned that lately into another scientific paper, which is considered to be a Q1 journal, scientific journal. It is a very high rank, and people in the scientific research will be understanding what I'm talking about.
Yeah, secure
So,
one.
yeah, Q1 journal, and that was just the 1st of March. It's a very recent publishing paper in 2021. So
Oh,
that was the
really?
last. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I told you before, I started in 2011, and after 10 years, it's getting there. I didn't stop the project. It's starting a line that have
Mm-hmm.
to be completed. And then every day I tended to open the internet and Google my name and see how people are conceiving my projects. And I
Yeah,
get
yeah, yeah.
amazed by the feedback. That motivates me. That what drives me. That my sound and my school of thinking is reaching people. So yeah, this is the real reward.
Yes, what
Even in
pleases me
Arch
is that
Daily, you can
it's not,
find it.
yes, what pleases me on the methodology or the process is that it's not everything is measurable. And when something is measurable, then you can improve on it. And that is really great.
True.
Generally, when we do low tech architecture or even all what we call environmental stuff, it's about intuition. Imagine if I do this, taking patterns from one place to another, putting them together, but they will not go to climate 2050. They won't do any simulation. They won't enter in any beam analyzing to analyze everything. But since you measure it and you can record it and you can write scientific papers, then we guys are able to consume it. And guy, listen to me. You must improve on it.
Yes, yes. This is the really core essence of scientific paper. You deliver what you produce to others, so others can take and start developing and producing their own science. And this is how humanity had advanced. Thousands of
Yeah.
years ago, we didn't have this kind of technology, thanks to the scientific thinking. So I have just presented two different approaches with two different design methodologies or thinking methodologies, a lateral thinking approach and a vertical thinking approach. One is borrowing solutions outside the domain, and the other is digging inside deep in the same problem. And I do believe that both are successful in the context of each competition.
Yes, guys, you listening, wherever you are, if you have questions, write them in the comment bar. Samer, I think will be open to have a session just to answer to your questions. You go through them, he'll answer to what he can answer, and yeah, because I too have start to have question how to analyze past architecture is what I'm doing for my thesis. But the various stuff we talked about, I've never thought of it. I was there like a 19th century architect designing everything with hand, but I cannot simulate the feelings and everything. But I'm starting to learn and I will deep digger. So you guys can write all your questions on the comment bar and answers will be given at a suitable time, of course. So I really don't know what was out of the box and in of the box, to be clear with you. But with your two presentation, I've understood. Generally, what you did in the second project or the second set of projects, a sustainable project on Earth, is what I used to call out of the box. Meanwhile, having understood what you said, that's not out of the box. I'm really
Inside it, totally
inside,
inside the box. Yes.
totally inside of the box. Why not understanding? So,
But let me just stop here for a moment. What is important, either it's outside the box or inside it, is to innovate, to have your
yes, of
original
course.
contribution. and it's much harder to innovate and have your original contribution inside the domain of rules and codes and things like that. But
Hmm.
yes, let's agree upon something that we have to innovate. We have to
Yes,
create something original. That is the important point.
yes. So it's true you thought of it, but now, Claire, can you define to us the relation between conceptual work and real life building for you in your way of approaching
Yes.
it?
Well, yeah, after this presentation, both of these projects have undergone through the same three phases: the
Hmm.
research phase, the design synthesis, and the presentation strategy. Either it is a real life building or it's a conceptual work. But in real life projects, you have another additional three phases, which is the design development, the detailed design drawings, and the execution drawings, including the
Yes,
workshop drawings and tender documents.
the most
And by the
boring.
way, these three phases also needs yes, you can tell that it's much boring, but let me tackle it. It needs much more innovation. You can innovate in these phases. The design development phase, it is the most important because it is turning this from a conceptual work into a real life building. The detailed design drawings and the execution drawings, you have to enjoy it. It's not much boring, but if you learned how to enjoy it, you will find innovation in it. Also in the tender documents, you have to choose the materials, and part of this innovation is to choose the materials that no one could imagine that could be used in another context, and you start experimenting them in a different context and in a different ways.
Mhm.
So you have to enjoy the journey, and you know that each phase has its own innovation.
Yes, because I'm out today. I'm just sending out detailings for a preschool I design. I enjoy designing. I enjoy solar analysis, climate analysis, improving in shades and everything. But once they say give the detailing, I was like, oh man, I'll sit for 2 or 3 months just giving back to them something I have in my head. Meanwhile, they don't have it. But you're true. If you are focused in that process, things may change. You may add on everything, and you can even go back to simulation. That's true. So, how are you then adding to future constantly by taking concepts to improve context?
Well, this is a very interesting question, actually. Let me start by I do believe that the process is much important than the product, and I've mentioned that earlier. As the journey begins, the destination is revealed. The real reward of the journey is not finding new solutions only, but to look at the problem with a fresh eyes. That's the most important. I try to offer a new approach to space architecture, community-centered design instead of human-centered design. The engineers at this time, they are much focused on the human-centered design, but we have to extend it from just a human-centered design to a community-centered design. It is important to think the whole process after bearing in mind the holistic image of the complexity of the global society, the anthropology, economic landscape, diversity of cultures, among many other issues. The responsibility of the architect. You're not just designing for one man or for a human being. You are really designing for a complete society, and it's much more complex. The interrelationship between the individuals of the society, especially if they have different cultures. How can you unite this diversity of cultures into one place? My greater vision since 2009 is to build a complete new exo world system. It's a new world system. I
Mhm.
designed the architecture of that system with its economical and governmental model. You do not
Oh,
only make physical buildings, you think about the economical aspect. You think about the governmental model that will be governing or ruling that society, that kind of architecture. Its currency. How can these people use the currency to trade in the inner trade? Its federations, its resources, the emergence of space factories and space industries, and maybe space medicine. It will be a
mhm.
new frontiers. I believe the new world will help new space cryptocurrencies to thrive. I called it the aqua currency. I designed a rough system. By the way, I'm an architect, but I keep on studying books of economics and business to have a better understanding of architecture. You cannot work on architecture unless you have this overview effect, which is just to take yourself outside of the architecture and start seeing it from the eyes of the economists, or from the eyes of the bankers, or the eyes of the politicians. They experience architecture not in the same way as you do, and this is important.
Yeah.
So I believe in this new world system, the aqua currency. It's a cryptocurrency based on the each nation reserves of water. In the future, water will be the most precious commodity, even more than gold, in outer space, and by the way, even on Earth. Many of the futurists believe that the next world war, will be on water resources, not on energy as we used to think. So
Even
it
on
is
Earth.
Yes, it is not my role to anticipate either this word will be a utopian or a dystopian. It might carry both words, by the way, but I call it the exotopian. So the exotopian, you will be having this balance. There is no complete utopia and there is no complete dystopian.
Hmm.
What really amazes me in the significance of the creation, that you can find the black and the white, the evil and the good, both are making the balance. So through architecture competitions, I tended to submit one project at a time of this new interplanetary exworld that I have in mind. Throughout these projects, I argue the rise of new major powers.
Hmm.
Dream, you can imagine, based of course upon your readings and your documentary that you continuously gain knowledge.
Hmm.
These new worlds or major powers, like Martian power, it might rise someday and be an independent power from Earth. They might have their economic independence from with different kinds of governmental forms. They might be having their own military, even. I'm
Yes.
building this world throughout the last 12 years. I can say that future always belong to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams and the power of
Yes.
their ideas. Dreams serve us as a guide to future. So our today's science was someone's dreams of the past.
And
People's
belongs to
passed
the
away,
first
but
to
dreams,
wake up.
continue to thrive.
Yes. And belongs to the
Yes.
first to wake up. So all
Yeah.
sleepers who may enjoy the
You know
journey.
something? About future, there are three quotes. Eleanor Roosevelt had this quote that calls that the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. But
Yeah.
Malcolm X has another quote, which is saying that the future belongs to those who start planning and working for it today. And
Yes.
if you just gather both of these quotes, you will find you have to dream, but you can't keep it as a dream. You have to work for it. So
Yes.
if you gather those both, yeah, that will be all.
Generally, having many initiative like this, interviews, conference, and whatever, they always ask me, "But what are you doing?" That I said generally that your future is what is written on your planning books. So if you cannot plan your future now, you have no future. And in 3 years from now, 5 years, 10 years, maybe 20 years from now, when people will be living in what you are designing, you will be able to go back 20 years ago and say, here's where you are living in now, and so on and so forth. So I believe everybody should take notice of this today, and I'll say that day I was aware. So, yes, when you were presenting your project and talking of cutting edge technologies, digitalization, like I say, um, it means that you are constantly using nowadays tools to improve in your design process. So, how how can I ask it? Describe more the role of an architect in the era of digital technologies. I mean, we are in the digital technology, and digital technology is the future. So, how can we learn from it, or improve from it, or discover a new way of doing?
Yes, this is also a very interesting question. I will try to make a new answer out of it, different from what I have mentioned earlier.
Hmm.
So let me first define how to be a successful, in my opinion, of course. To be successful means you have to keep improving yourself and learning continuously. If you stood still with the knowledge you have yesterday, that means that you are receding, not advancing.
Of
The
course.
world is moving faster than ever, and any successful innovator had to realize this. Today's pace of technology is very rapid. You have digital modeling, digital design, generative design, parametric design, building information technology, BIM, digital fabrication, digital manufacturing, 3D printing, 3D scanning, name it. You have every kind of technology that you can imagine. They are all fancy tools, which add new freedoms to the architect to innovate on a much higher level than ever before. Also, new thinking skills are important to give the architect the mental fitness vertical thinking, horizontal thinking, critical thinking, scientific method, abductive reasoning, inductive reasoning, deductive reasoning, six thinking hats from Edward de Bono. Also, I found it very important. Visual note taking, graphical thinking, among many others. So,
Mhm.
and the future also implies that there will be new kind of technologies incorporating the AI, the artificial intelligence, the deep machine learning, the IoT based design or center design, the Internet of Things might change everything. You know,
Yeah.
when material only discovered, and let me take this as an opportunity, you know, before invention of glass in buildings, we have a totally different kind of architecture. After the invention of glass, we have now skyscrapers, you can use glass, but before glass, people just had openings in their buildings, maybe with a wooden shutter or something like that.
Mhm.
But after glass, the architecture transformed um, in a very different way, you know. And I've just been conducting a research for a couple of months ago about something called the aluminum oxynitride. The aluminum oxynitride, which is called the transparent metal. It is something
Mhm.
that looks like glass, but it is transparent aluminum. The
Yeah.
transparent aluminum, it does exist. This technology is available today, but it is very expensive. 1 meter costs about 2000, $20,000 US dollar. So it is very expensive. But at the, you know, as the technology advances, it will be start cutting its expenses. So
Mhm.
something like, if we have this transparent metal in our building, you can imagine how the architecture will be totally
Yes.
transforming.
With
And this
new,
is just by one element.
yes, working with the
New material, yeah.
new properties, physical
Yeah, new
properties. I
properties.
can imagine the properties of aluminium being transparent, much more being helpful in some weight conditions.
I can
Yeah.
imagine new spans of architecture without columns, column-free glass structures. So
Mhm.
name it, yeah. So this is just for one example, and it is not only about the aluminum, transparent aluminum. You can find many more findings and new innovations. I do believe that the pace of technology nowadays is very rapidly advancing. So that will conduct a radical shift and paradigm shift in the architecture in the few recent coming years.
Yeah. So this next question is making me to laugh because I would want to say like me, but not quite like me. But we are juniors ambassadors from Jacques Rougerie Foundation, and that's the first thing that brought us together. So thank the foundation, and I thank you to accepting to be a junior ambassador. It's not easy for a senior architect to be a junior ambassador, but in a sense, uh, those who heard us or heard you from the beginning will understand that you are in a journey with the foundation. So it's a process, and the process is ongoing, and it's going towards a future out of Earth. And it all start, everything will start on Earth. So, as junior ambassadors, can you explain a little bit about the
Well,
competition, about the foundation, for those who don't know, or for those who
yeah,
interest to
yeah.
know?
Well, I am proud of being a junior ambassador in Jacques Rougerie Foundation. Actually, I have to credit and give the thanks to these guys. It was a very important step for me to award recognition. I wasn't be known today unless I have started 5 years ago with these guys.
Mhm.
Also, only those who have achieved the good accomplishments are only selected for that role. And no one could be really a junior ambassador for Jacques Rougerie unless he had won or he has a very significant contribution to architecture in the extreme environments. So they are nominated. And I do believe, I have this belief, you know, the next rising star, the next Zaha Hadid will be among the list of the junior ambassadors. They are
Yeah.
juniors. After 10 years from now, you will find them. These are the coming future pioneers of architecture.
Yes, and not I'm sure knowing all of them and the work that not only one, we might have a future in which we have many Zahadid, and that will be great for architecture too. So before my last question, there's a question that is coming up. How do you cope with social reality and time for research? Because I know guys that say you must choose or to live your life or to leave a legacy. So how do you cope?
Yes.
Where do you take time to be designing? Because personally, when you have a client in front of you, he asks you in 1 month, I want my project. You'll be able, how can I do it in 1 month? I don't have time. I must be studying, learning, and everything. But you are able to produce. Maybe is to produce great architecture once. So in your portfolio, they will not see a business project, research project like many others do. They have conceptual project and then some project they just do to pay the bills. So how do you cope with social realities and time for
Well,
genuine
the answer
architecture?
of the answer of this question actually is in main 3 points. The first point, we are architects, right? We are
Yeah.
used to design. But
Hmm.
this time I will not be talking about designing architecture, but I will be designing my social circle. And this
Hmm.
should be coming early in your life. When you
Yeah.
just surround your people with the right individuals and the right people, even when you start approaching your family and they know about your aspiration dreams, they will tend to help you.
Hmm.
Your friends, the true friends that will be really helping you. So start by designing your own social context, your own social circle that will be providing you with all support to thrive and to be successful. So this is the first important part.
Hmm.
Also, you have to design your time management plan. I am one of the people who are dedicated totally to my work. So I dedicate all my time, money, and effort into a greater vision. It's not about designing a building, as I have mentioned earlier.
Hmm.
The higher purpose or the most much important purpose is to serve humanity, to have this original print and to leave legacy, your own legacy to others, to advance the humanity. Einstein, the world before Einstein was something, and after Einstein, it was a totally different world. The foundation of the quantum physics, and every kind of these guys. You can imagine the world without Edison. You can imagine the world without Tesla, and nowadays you can imagine the future without Elon Musk. These guys are the game changer. These guys are the people. So why don't you have the ambition to be one of these people? Why don't you just dedicate your life to have this original contribution to the others and to the future? Not only to think about your own success, but to think about the success of the humanity and the future of the mankind on this earth. So first
Yes.
of all, design your social circle. Second, think about the higher purpose and the holistic image, the bigger image. And third of all, do not really continue the career of architecture unless you have the passion for architecture. Our profession is not an ordinary career, it's a passionate career. Unless you have the passion to architecture, you cannot really complete, the journey through it.
Yes, I think the one asking the question was thinking of financial rewards, but I think to achieve, you must have a name that can be thought of in the future, and everyone must know that whatever the future, the amount of money you make in your local area, because with architecture you cannot break ground like Elon Musk without innovating in a new way. But no matter the success, all of us are going to die one day, and it's all about legacy. It's all about creating a better future. That's my belief, and that's yours. So, like he said, design your social cycle, people that can help you very well. That's great. So, any tips for students, for young architects? Even though you've given
Yes.
tips and tips and tips and tips, but the question is there to be answered.
Well, if you didn't practice, your muscle will grow less.
Yeah,
And with practice, your muscles will grow higher, right?
yeah,
So my real first uh, advice: draw, draw, or keep trying. Never get depressed if you are failing. Know that the failure is just a step in the success process.
hmm,
So architecture, as I mentioned earlier, it's a profession associated with passion. If you don't have the passion, do not continue to pursue this career. As Hadid maybe told, if you don't really love architecture, you will not succeed in architecture. I'm
yes,
a
that's.
futurist. I'm a technology driven. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a science tech, one of the
Hmm.
people who writes the design fictions for the future. And using the science fiction of today, once it will be in someday it will be turned into a science reality. 200 years ago, Julie Verne,
Yeah,
the science fiction writer, imagined having a big metal barrel and putting people inside it and inserting them in the deep water. And 160 years later, we invented the submarines. He imagined having cannon and putting people in this cannon and shooting them to the moon. And in 1969, in Apollo 11, we landed on the moon. So what we really predict today, what we really write today for the future, it will come someday. but we just had, had the opportunity to think it first. So you have to think to let the future generation to achieve what you're thinking in, and start by putting solid steps into this dream to
Yeah.
turn it into a reality. Some people, like in Dubai, they are not waiting for the future, or in China, they are actually manufacturing the future as we talk today. So the
Yes.
future technology and visions are coming. It's inevitable. The question is, did we plan how to use it? That's it.
That's the main question. So, guys, generally, I finish the interview by asking the question, do you have a last word? But I won't ask this time because I'm sure you are busily trying to type questions, to ask questions. It will for be next time. We were really pleased to have Samet today. Man, it's just insightful. I don't have the capacity to do a summary now, so I'm going back to school. So, guys, continuous education start now. Whenever you listen, you must. There's a saying that says, when you listen for something the first time with concentration, you master it at, I think it's 50%. If you read it back, it's 75%, and if you read it back 8 times, is 98%. But that is for those that just want to master what he said and have the loadage. If you take time to practice, you master it in 100%. And in design terms, it means you create something new for a new world. So I'm happy to have you, Dr. Samer. And
Thank you so much. Really, it was my pleasure. Really sharing experiences today, and I'll be waiting really for the feedback of people. I would like to connect it to people, and I'll be waiting for any inquiries. My social media accounts are available. My
yeah, yeah.
website, even my email. You can, whoever who is interested can approach me and start sharing experiences. Everyone is welcome, and all students and people are welcome.
And for you, Sub-Saharan African architects, the event has even become international Archi Talk. I'll be behind Samer all day, all night, whenever I can, to be sure that he's part of that event. So uh, I'm not asking him to do any promise. He does not know the date. He does not know the time. He doesn't know anything. But even if he will have to record and send us the knowledge. We'll be happy to take it in Archi Talk 2021. Yes, and it's the 5th edition of the international event. So we are grateful. So nice afternoon, nice
We can
evening.
arrange this. Yes.
Yes, 9 months. All his social medias links and email will be in the description. You can ask him the question directly there. There's no protocol. So stay blessed, everybody. And once more, thanks
Yes.
to you, and thanks to the foundation, and thanks to
Thank you so
architecture.
much.
Yes, you're welcome.
Doing the things we do, spreading the news we spread.